Welcome back to Open Line. We have with us Senator Steve Dickerson, Republican from Nashville, Representative Jeremy Faison, Republican from Cosby. We are talking about the bill they are introducing, medical marijuana bill in the Tennessee General Assembly. A lot of calls. Let's go to Billy. Hello, Billy.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Yes. I'm kind of agreeing with the guy that called in earlier. 17 years ago, he said he was put on medicine by his doctor.
Okay.
Okay. So was I. I went through a divorce. I was going through anxiety, depression, stress. My medicine, and my doctor put me on Xanax, and now it's a drug that I have to go to my doctor once a month and pay over $100 just to get this drug because it's now known as a street drug.
Right. So you support this? Do you have a question about their proposed bill?
I support it because I grew up as a farm girl, growing tobacco, and I believe in things grown out of the ground is purer than man-made.
Okay. All right. Very good. What do you think of that?
So I would jump in and say two things. First of all, the expense of a doctor's office visit and then a prescription is significant. And so one of the things we're trying to harness is the strength of the free market, and that is competition. And one of the potential parts of our bill is to have 50 different spots to grow cannabis in the state. And each of those could then have a few dispensaries throughout the state. It really depends on supply and demand. But under those circumstances, we would have groups competing with each other, and that would actually tend to drive the price down. And as a result, I think not only are we going to get better health care, but I think we're going to do it in a cost-effective manner, which speaks to some of her concerns. The other thing, we haven't mentioned this yet, she was talking about Xanax and anxiety. Yeah. One of the conditions that I think is best treated by cannabis is post-traumatic stress disorder. And that is prominent in veterans, the very people who have risk their lives on our behalf. It's actually not uncommon in firefighters and police officers due to the things that they see. And these are the people that literally are making our lives better and safer, and I think medical cannabis really is almost uniquely beneficial to them, and they can't get it.
How close do you think you were last year to passing this bill?
Well, and really it was 2 years ago that we had the best momentum. Last year we were just sort of in a cleanup mode, I guess. We got some really, really good momentum, and there was a period probably around March 15th or April 1st, give or take, of 2014 where we were really getting momentum. But frankly, it wasn't as good a bill. And that's one of the things, and I wish I could trot out a perfect bill every time, first time, but none of us is perfect. And so we had a bill that really was not well suited to Tennessee. It was not perfectly suited to Tennessee. And so from that trial and error process, Representative Faison has worked tirelessly to get a better bill. It fits better with our pre-existing code, that is the laws and the regulations and the rules in Tennessee. And it also, I think, is just a more Tennessee-like bill, if you will. And I think it talks about the grand divisions. It wants to make sure that cannabis is available throughout the state. It's going to address things like rural farming, and so one of the things we're trying to build into this, for example, is the first, we're going to call it a grow. The first grows will by definition take place in some of the poorer counties. So there will be an economic benefit. And so frankly, I tip my hat to him. He's written a better bill than I did 2 years ago, and as a result, I think we're moving the ball forward.
And so if you had to, percentage chance,
right.
What do you think your chances are passing this bill?
I believe we're above 50% of a chance to pass it. I'd like to speak to what this lady just brought up.
And I would bet his house on it, but I wouldn't bet my house on it. So
the Senate, they're kind of like curmudgeons over there, to be honest with you. You know what an old curmudgeon is?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Let's talk about Xanax. I'm openly a Christian. I don't mind admitting that openly. And some of my brothers and sisters, Christians, would say that there's a problem with taking a mind-altering drug. I have asked a couple of them who've called me on this, and I said, are you all right with a person taking a Xanax when they're stressed out, when somebody's died in their family, when they're nervous? And what it comes back to overwhelmingly is typically well, that's prescribed. And I'm like, do you understand that Xanax is a mind-altering drug? It's a chemical that we brought out of a field, put in a lab, perverted it in such a way that you can draw a major addiction to it. It's amazing when you start asking people who have opposition to medical grade cannabis, what is your opposition? All right, now let's compare that to what the other stuff, whether it's pain medicine or psychotropic drugs or whatever, pain relief, whatever it is. When you start to look at that, what's already legal, as long as a doctor prescribes it, it's fine. They're like, wow, I never thought about it that way. When we look at what is legal, we find out that the potential side effects often are gravely more than the potential side effects of the medical use of this plant.
And so, all right, you said bring it on. If you're opposed to this, bring it on.
I wish they would call in.
Because
yes.
we're getting a ton of calls, but it's primarily people that support it, which is great, and we're going to get to your calls. All right, that's a very interesting argument you just broke down. People will say, from a religious perspective, it's mind-altering, and I'm opposed to that. What are some of the other big arguments you're hearing against it, and what would you say?
The other argument is that this is a step to recreational use, or this is a gateway drug. I have answers for both of that. This is not a step to gateway, and it's not a recreational drug. But Doc, would you like to handle that first, and then I'll stir up what you say.
So gateway drug is a term that's used. That is, if you were never exposed to a drug, then your mind never craves that drug, and then your mind would not crave other drugs. So the theory being, try marijuana kind of like that, then you move on to cocaine and heroin and whoever, whatever else there is. And the gateway theory is not even proven. And it's not really an addictionologist, or I'm sure I'm going to get calls. I have several colleagues who are addictionologists, and some are going to disagree with that. But I think people tend to have a psyche or a personality that may be addictive in nature. It's not the marijuana that triggers the addiction, it's the internal chemicals or the working of the mind. So I really don't think it's a gateway drug. In fact, if you ask addictionologists, and I've met with them in the state, I said, tell me what the #1 gateway drug is, and they said, actually, it's tobacco. To the extent that there is a gateway drug, people smoke it, they find, and I actually have never smoked cigarettes. My parents were heavy smokers, so I was exposed to it throughout my childhood and never took up the habit because I didn't like the smell. And they would say that actually alters people's brain chemistry enough that actually triggers them to look for something maybe more substantial in that regard. And so yeah, if you want to stop gateway drugs, let's get tobacco off the market.
Well, let's talk about the addiction. They say it's majorly addictive. One thing we have to stop and look at is scientific addiction. For something to be addictive, scientifically or physiological addictive, your body has to draw a need for it, and your body begins to not be able to function. If you take Xanax for 6 months straight, or an opiate for 6 months straight, never missing a day, and then you stop cold turkey at the end of 6 months, it will put you in the hospital, an ICU, or it could kill you. Because your body has a need, it creates a need. You can take marijuana for 6 months straight and stop cold turkey, and your body has drawn an affection to it, but not a physiological affection to it. So if there's an addiction, it's an addiction to the feeling, not an addiction like the typical medicines that we have today. So there's a huge difference when you look at what addiction is. It's nowhere near the addiction that prescriptions are, or alcohol is.
Interesting. All right, let's go to Martin. Hello, Martin.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
I'm supporting the medical marijuana deal because I'm a cancer patient. I have been going through cancer since 2003. It started out with colon, then colon rectal, then it went to my kidney. They had removed my left kidney, and now I have lung cancer. And I do believe that marijuana is better for a patient like me or anybody that does have chronic diseases that really, really hurts. Cancer is nothing to play with. I agree with that. And far as the marijuana making someone want to go do something else, that's not true. I'll have to agree with the gentleman. It is the person itself that goes on and does something more.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Martin.
So I mean, again, he's the guy we're trying to help. I mean, of all people in our state that need our help, the gentleman who's been fighting cancer for a decade, chemotherapy, the nausea, and in fact, when I ran this bill, that's the term for it. When I introduced and sponsored the bill a couple of years ago, the Department of Health was opposed to me. They said, we do, however, admit there are a couple of conditions that it helps, but the population risk is greater than the benefit to these individual sufferers. Cancer and really the nausea from the chemotherapy is something that I think universally is accepted to be benefited from cannabis. But the Department of Health thought that maybe the destigmatization, I don't want to put words in their mouth, of cannabis might lead to it being readily available. And my counter to that is, well, it's the biggest cash crop in Tennessee right now. It's already readily available recreationally. We're trying to get it available medically to people like Martin, who, heaven forbid, why leave anything, in any therapy and any treatment untested on him. He's a guy who just needs help.
Do you have any sense now? So that was 2 years ago. The state opposed the bill. Do you have any sense of their position now?
They're going to oppose it. I've already been talking to Department of Safety, Department of Health. They're going to fight us with all they have. And I would like to remind the viewers that their positions belong to you. I would encourage you not just to call your representative and senator, call the governor's office too, and let them know that this is important. I would ask this guy Martin and the people who just heard Martin's story, ask yourself a question. Do we as a society really believe that we should spend money incarcerating Martin because he wants to self-medicate, because he realizes there's a benefit in taking this plant over an opiate? Is it a wise resource of your money for us to incarcerate this man who chooses to take ownership of his own health and do something that might not be legal in Tennessee? Do we want to incarcerate him? It's just a question you need to answer.
And let me echo that. Call the Department of Health, call the Department of Safety. Right. Be nice. Don't use any four-letter words. I mean, I get emails and phone calls you would not believe sometimes. But I think literally just the stories that these people could tell and their support will begin to bend the curve in favor of this bill.
Do you think there'll be a day on the Hill where, I guess if it gets out when this might be debated in a committee, do you think there'll be a day when a lot of people could come down en masse and show that kind of support?
I don't want to tip our hand, but of course that's part of what we're going to do. I mean, and Jeremy and I like to have fun at work. We laugh a lot. We're very sarcastic guys. We are really serious about this issue, and so if we're laughing, I don't want anybody to take issue with that. We're very passionate about what we do. But we're going to have the committee rooms full of patients who would benefit from this. Veterans, children, cancer patients. I mean, the list goes on. Crohn's disease. We will have people there that will make an impression. But the impression needs to be made now, even more importantly, because we're going to be out of session for about 10 days. We have one more day tomorrow, and then we reconvene January 30th. Now's the time to get your state senator, your state house member, call the governor, call the Department of Health, call the Department of Safety.
When you talk about full, our lines are full. All right, we're going to take a break. Then we're going to come back. I'll go through all the calls. Take a break. Be back right after this.